So we're doing some diagnosis. You guys might see an alarm or two.
Okay, we copy that.
Good morning from Mission Control in Houston. We're on the air with the space station update here from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. You're looking at a live view here inside the room. The Expedition 42 crew members are safe and in good shape inside the Russian segment of the International Space Station after an alarm was enunciated around 3 a.m. Central Time in the U.S. segment of the complex that sometimes can be indicative of an apparent ammonia leak. Following contingency procedures, the crew donned masks and moved into the Russian segment of the station, closing the hatch to the U.S. segment behind them. Once inside the Russian segment, the crew members were allowed to remove their masks. We need to emphasize that there is no hard data to suggest that there was, in fact, a real ammonia leak. Again, we need to emphasize that there is no data at the moment suggesting that there was, in fact, a real ammonia leak. Flight controllers here in Mission Control in Houston detected an increase in pressure in the water loop for Thermal Control System B on the station, one of two redundant cooling loops, which triggered the enunciation of that alarm on board. Acting in extremely conservative fashion, the crew was directed to isolate themselves in the Russian segment. Non-essential equipment in the U.S. segment of the station was also powered down per the procedures, but at the moment is in the process of being powered up once again. In an exchange at 6:02 a.m. Central Time between Expedition 42 Commander Barry Wilmore of NASA and spacecraft communicator Jim Kelly, Kelly said flight controllers were analyzing their data, but said it is not yet known if the alarm was actually triggered by a real leak or whether the situation was caused by a faulty sensor or by a problem in a computer relay box that sends data and commands to various systems on the station. Let's take a listen to that clip.
Station Houston on 1 for Butch with big picture, no rush.
All right, Vegas, we're ready. Go ahead.
Hey, Butch, no change to the stuff that I told you about earlier with the Loop Bravo and LTL loops and the leak and all that stuff that we talked about before. We're still doing a graceful power down. There are several things that we've decided not to power down we're hanging on to. We have also still not vented Loop Bravo, which, of course, is a step that you can't take back. So big picture perspective, we're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. We're not entirely convinced that this is an ammonia leak, as you probably suspect from the fact that we had you start, stop, and then start over again. It may be there's a possibility that this is a combination of sensor problems, MDM partial failures, and thermal effects all thrown together in the exact wrong way to make this thing look like it was your classic ammonia leak. Bottom line is we've got all the experts that have come in now. Everybody's pouring over the data. We've got all the smart folks taking a look at it, and we're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Right now, our DPDT is still effectively stable. If sometimes it looks like it's a little bit positive, but it's certainly not increasing at a great rate. We've got at least a full day before we hit any kind of limit right now for positive pressure relief or anything like that. So bottom line is we're pretty much staying in the configuration we're in right now while all the folks come in and talk about it, take a look at the data, deconstruct this thing, and try to figure out exactly what happened.
Vegas, we really appreciate that summary, and we'll just stand by and ready to do anything from our end that you have for us. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we wish we had more for you guys to do at this point. We don't. So enjoy your impromptu day off here a little bit. We'll keep you guys informed as to what's going on. And we'll also let you know as the conventional wisdom comes around on the story. But like I said, the good news right now is we're not utterly convinced that we had the very bad problem that we had indications of. Clearly, we did the right thing with the indications that we had, but we're still trying to figure out what the actual event is.
Okay, yeah, we would concur with that, Vegas. Thanks a lot. And so, you know, Terry's been working really hard. We've got all the masks and everything resituated, and so everything's back in its place right now.
Sounds great. And we'll want to get a full report from you guys later. As you can imagine, right down here, we're still very busy taking care of the after effects of the actions taken earlier. So we will probably call you here in a few hours to get a full report on that and talk back and forth about what happened and all the rest of it. But if you guys don't mind waiting a little while for that, we'd prefer to hold off.
mind at all. I just was giving you a brief summary. That's why we hadn't called you with anything. We know you guys are busy, so we'll stand by for your call.
Perfect for us. Thanks very much, Butch.
Thank you, Vegas.
Again, that exchange that took place about an hour ago here in Mission Control, spacecraft communicator and astronaut James Kelly here in Mission Control talking to Expedition 42 Commander Barry Wilmore of NASA aboard the International Space Station. Here in the flight control room, a variety of flight directors and flight controllers have gathered in the overnight hours to work the issue that developed about 4 hours ago with the annunciation of an alarm on board the station that sometimes can be indicative of an apparent ammonia leak. However, there is no data, repeat, no data at the moment, no concrete data that suggests that there was in fact an ammonia leak that caused the crew members to move inside the Russian segment of the International Space Station after donning masks where they are still located. Once again, the Expedition 42 crew members are safe and in good shape inside the Russian segment of the station after an alarm was enunciated around 3 a.m. Central Time in the U.S. segment of the complex that sometimes can be indicative of an apparent ammonia leak. But again, we need to emphasize that there is no data to suggest that there was, in fact, a real ammonia leak, despite a number of reports that are circulating to that effect. Following contingency procedures, the crew donned masks and moved into the Russian segment of the station, closing the hatch to the U.S. segment behind them. Once inside the segment, the crew members were allowed to remove their masks, as you heard in that exchange a short time ago between Jim Kelly, the Capcom here in Mission Control, and Barry Wilmore, Space Station Commander. Flight controllers here in Houston detected an increase in pressure in the water loop for thermal control system B or Bravo on the station, one of two redundant cooling loops on the station, which triggered the alarm to be enunciated. Acting in very, very conservative fashion, the crew was directed to isolate themselves in the Russian segment. Non-essential equipment in the U.S. segment of the station was powered down in an orderly fashion, but is currently in the process of being powered back up, once again, as flight controllers pore over their data before making the next set of recommendations to Flight Director Dina Cantella, who has been on console throughout the overnight hours. She is now joined on console on the far right of your screen by Flight Director Scott Stover, who will be on for the Orbit 2 shift of this day's activities. Again, it is not firmly known what caused the alarm to be enunciated. There is no firm indication at this moment that there was in fact an ammonia leak on the station. That is being analyzed as engineers here in Houston pore over their data, and in fact engineers around the world at the other flight control centers, at the Columbus Control Center in Oberpfaffenhofen, Germany for the European Space Agency, and the Japanese Space Agency's flight control room in Tsukuba, Japan. They are also looking at the data from their systems, since they are part of the U.S. segment of the International Space Station. There will be a lot more information unfolding as the hours pass by here this morning. It is possible that we will be doing a mission status briefing later in the day to recap the day's events. Needless to say, the day's timeline for the crew will be basically scrapped as they continue to wait further word on the next course of action that will allow them to reopen the hatch to the U.S. segment of the International Space Station through the Unity module and to move back into the U.S. segment to resume their normal day's activities.